Welcome back, superstar. In this video, I'm going to talk about how to raise your standards, set boundaries, and stop people pleasing. Let's go. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about what people pleasing is costing you. Then I'm going to dive into where it comes from, why we do it. And then, of course, I'm going to share with you some strategies that you can use to stop doing it, to raise your standards, and to set boundaries in your life. If you're watching this video, it's probably because you've had the experience of bending over backwards, giving away your power, doing everything you could to make other people happy, and then finding yourself exhausted, overwhelmed, miserable, or resentful in the process. Don't worry, I got you. I got you because I am you. I was you. I've done that. And I've turned that around in my life. One of the most important reasons to deal with this problem is because when we spend our life trying to please everyone else and doing for others, what ends up happening is that our own dreams and desires in life take a back seat. And we end up not doing whatever our destiny is. We don't do the thing we came for. And then we end up resentful, miserable, ashamed, guilty, sad, mad, whatever it is. It's not a good thing. So let's talk about where this people-pleasing behavior comes from. Like with most maladaptive patterns in life, it probably started when you were somewhere between 0 and 7 years old. Somewhere along the line, you got the message that in order to be loved, in order to survive, in order to get your needs met, you had to say yes to others, you had to please others, you had to be a good girl or a good boy, you had to worry about or manage or control or even manipulate situations in order to make other people happy and put yourself second or third or even last. Now, the solution to this problem, the solution to people pleasing is basically two core things. One is to raise your standards and another is to set boundaries. Now, I can't take full credit for figuring all this out by myself. In fact, I have to give some of the credit, a large part of the credit, to one of my mentors, Nanilea Diamond. She does a lot of work around standards and boundaries. You can find her and her Facebook group. I'll go ahead and link to her below. She's amazing. Highly recommend checking out her work. But essentially, in order to be able to stop people pleasing, it really helps to start focusing on yourself and what you want and what you're here to create. And that starts with raising your standards. That starts with setting a new floor for what you will and will not tolerate. Now, at this point, some people want to know, well, what's the difference between standards and boundaries? It's a good question. I didn't really know myself. But essentially, standards are internal for you. Your standards are the agreement that you make with yourself about what you will and won't tolerate. Now, whether or not somebody meets you at your standards is usually where a boundary comes in. A boundary is how you relate to the world. It's how you set your standard in relationship to others. So if this is your standard, your boundary is what you will and will not accept from others. So for example, I might have a standard that I'm going to meditate every morning. I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to eat right. I'm going to have this 2-hour morning practice in the morning. This is all true, by the way. I did set this standard a couple of years ago. And then the boundary might be I do not book coaching calls before 11 a.m. The boundary might be if someone needs to squeeze in a call with me, we can do that as long as it's after 11 in the morning, right? So there's a standard of how you're going to take care of yourself. And then there's the boundary of how you're going to manage life and relationships and agreements with others around this standard. Now, once you get really clear about what you want, and we'll talk about this in a minute, and you've created standards and boundaries, then it's a lot easier to say no to people, and it's a lot easier to stop people pleasing. So let me share with you some actual steps that you can use, I hope will help you to raise your standards, set boundaries, and stop saying yes to things that you want to say no to. By the way, I highly encourage you to subscribe to my channel. I post a lot of videos, at least one daily. And I'd love to know if you like this video by clicking the like button, and feel free to send me a comment below. So the first thing that needs to happen in order to stop people pleasing and raise those standards, set those boundaries, is to slow down and to get really still and really clear about why you are here on this planet. What is your purpose? Now, by the way, purpose is not something that you stumble over or that somebody tells you or shares with you. If you don't know what your purpose is, that's no problem. You can just choose one for right now, and it can always evolve and change. But once you've committed yourself to something that's bigger than you in this world, it's a lot easier, number one, to get excited about life. And also, it's a lot easier to cut out the things that don't serve that purpose. So, my first piece of advice is slow down, get still, and know thyself. Start to really connect with who you really are, why you're really here, what you're up to in the world, what matters to you, so that you can start to notice how often things that don't actually matter are taking your attention and your time away from what you're really here for. The second is to take responsibility for your life. One of the biggest things that happens when we people please is we generally tend to also get into something called victim mode. Now, I have a whole bunch of videos about victim mode and the drama triangle. Highly recommend checking those out. I'll link to some of them below. But in a nutshell, victim mode is where we are at the mercy of everything that is outside of our control, and where we feel like other people and other circumstances and other things outside of us run our lives. Our boss tells us what to do. Our mother did this to us and now we feel this way. And you're making me crazy and you make me mad. And basically outsourcing all of our power to other people. So in order to start setting standards and boundaries, you've got to take complete and total and utter radical responsibility for yourself in your life. And it's really interesting because people can get really triggered by this and say, well, it's not my fault that I was born this way, or I was born poor, or I was born sick, or I was born whatever. And you're right, it's not. And that's part of what it is to be human, to come to this earth and have the experience of being limited in certain ways, and to be able to move beyond those limitations, transcend those limitations, and find your power in the face of those limitations. This is a quick video, so I'm not gonna go deep into this, but my advice would be to really take some time, take a moment, take a day or a week or whatever you need to basically choose to take full responsibility for your life. It doesn't have to be your fault. You don't have to be to blame for anything that's happened to you, but you can be at cause and take responsibility for everything going forward. What happens to you is not your fault, but how you deal with it is your responsibility. The next step is to dive into the discomfort. This is a lot of times what causes us to say yes when we really mean no. It's that we don't want to be with the discomfort of rejection, or we don't want to be with the discomfort of being judged by somebody. So let's say that we learned all of our life that in order to get love from our mother, our father, whomever, we had to say yes, we had to be a good girl, we had to do what they asked. And we've carried that pattern into our adult life with us. And now we bend over backwards for every boss, for every boyfriend, for whoever asks us to do something. Well, generally, the reason that we do that is because we don't want to be with the discomfort of feeling unloved, of feeling rejected, of feeling like a bad person, of feeling like saying no or turning someone down or not making them happy. Notice the projection of power outside of ourselves, right? Like we have to make someone happy. It's our responsibility to make them happy. That's ridiculous, right? But we spend our lives trying to do that. Well, it's because we're trying to avoid the feeling of discomfort that comes with the no or the rejection. So what if we were to just be with that discomfort? What if we could get really comfortable with being rejected? What if we could get really comfortable with being the bad girl instead of the good girl? What if we could get really comfortable with having somebody tell us, you're ruining my life? And you'd be like, I'm sorry that you feel that way. Like, what if we could just be with that? That would be really powerful. That would be a very empowering thing to be able to do. And so we need to practice it. Most of us don't have it in us naturally to just be with that discomfort. And so you might have to practice it. Like, what does it feel like to be with rejection? What does it feel like to be with somebody blaming me for something, right? So that's another big piece of this. When you can be with the discomfort, then you're willing to face the discomfort. Then they've got nothing on you. You can say no and feel whatever fire come back at you and stand in your no, stand in your boundary, stand on that higher standard. And then finally, this is really something that I could spend all week on, is setting the boundaries. Like, what are your boundaries? Now that you know who you are, what you want, you're capable of being with discomfort. And I'm not pretending like all this happens all simultaneously in a heartbeat, but you're practicing it, right? But you have a sense of who you are. You have a sense of being with discomfort and facing the fire of another person's disappointment. You've decided, what you're up to in life. You've taken responsibility. This is my life. I will do what I want. I won't say yes when I really mean no. Well, now it's time to go to these relationships that you have in your life and start to reorganize agreements and start to talk to people and say, hey, I really want to have a beautiful relationship with you. I love you. I care about you. And that means that we need to talk about certain ways that we're doing things, how we communicate, how we're handling the kids, how we're showing up for work, whatever the agreements are, just coming and facing those difficult, uncomfortable conversations to set new standards and boundaries. And one great quote is, good fences make good neighbors. In my opinion, some of one of the best things to do, especially in business, around business agreements, is get your agreements in writing. I like to say, if it isn't in writing, it doesn't exist. So if you have a new client relationship, establish, I don't work before 11 a.m. or I take Fridays off, or I only schedule appointments on Mondays and Wednesdays between this time and this time. You get to be the boss of your life. You get to establish those standards. And then if somebody wants you to change something or squeeze something in, you get to be the superhero, the good guy that says, okay, sure, I'll do that, instead of having it be an expectation that you will always say yes and always bend over backwards. So as I was finishing up this video, I realized there's so much more I want to share with you about it. So I went ahead and created a part 2 of this video that I invite you to watch next. How to raise standards, set boundaries, and stop people pleasing, part 2, linked below. Enjoy.